45 crowd, you've all had your coffee and you are awake. By asking you to do something a little bit different. This morning in Matthew's Gospel, Jesus talks about you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world. I'm going to ask you for a few minutes to turn to those around you and tell each other what is salt, what's it good for, what's it about, how do you use it, is it bad, is it worth anything? Then talk about light. What is it? What's it good for? What's it used for? Are there different kinds of light? Take a few moments now, turn around, chatter, share, because I'm going to ask you for responses when you're done. Go. I should do this. Okay. I see some of you have had espressos. And my introverts are all going, oh no, don't do this to me. Salt. What do you got for salt? Tell me, salt. What? Preserve? Healing? Flavor? Taste? Purified. What else? Change? Okay, change. Good. That's a new one. Any others? You're from the north, aren't you? And Carol, when you go home, next time you cook, add some of that salt to his meal and see how he does. Any others? He is the salt of the earth. We hear that. Yeah. Causes high blood pressure. So there are negatives to salt, right? Salt can be toxic. Light. Helps you find your way. What else? Inspires. What else? I'm sorry? Illumines things. Sunshine. What else? Feels good. Does light feel good? Does light feel good? Security. Okay. What else? New day. What else? I'm sorry? Laser light. Ooh, wow. That's high tech. One more. Any others? Yeah. It can melt stuff. Very good. So salt gives flavor. Salt is a preservative, right? Salt has healing qualities. You know, many European insurance companies will pay for the cost of people traveling to Israel to float in the Dead Sea. because of the saltiness of the sea. Personally, I'm convinced that's the water Jesus walked on because you can't sink on it. There's so much salt in that lake, you know. But it has medicinal value. So it can be used for healing, for taste. It's used for fertilizer. One of the sweetest tomatoes I've ever had in my life were in Egypt, which they attribute to the salt in the soil. The word salary, S-A-L-A-R-Y, is derived from the word salt. Because in the ancient world, Roman soldiers were often paid with salt. It was so valuable. In fact, at that time, you could trade an ounce of salt for an ounce of gold. If candy and nuts, if and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all be happy at Christmas, right? It can be toxic. So these are intrinsic elements. You can't see them. I mean, you can't see taste, and you can't see all these things, but they are inherent in the core of salt. You follow me? You see salt, but there's a whole lot more there than salt. It has value, it has substance, something in it. It's core value. Light. What do you got for light? We did light, right? Light helps you to see things. Light is outside of us. Light shows direction. It illuminates. It can give heat or not, depending on LED or incandescent or whatever you use. Light travels quickly, 186,000 per second. You see? You can't hold light. In reality, you can't even see light. You can see a light bulb, but you know, light just kind of illuminates. Light cannot be held or possessed unless you try to cover it or smother it. And then it has no value at all. Light has no purpose. You don't need it. And as someone said, light can also be dangerous. You know, light fires. I kind of smile at this because Jesus says you don't light a candle and put it under your bushel basket or under a bed. Well, a 3-year-old knows that. I mean, you don't put it under your bed. That's not real smart to have a flame burning under your bed. So it can be dangerous. All right? So we have to ask ourselves, what Jesus really talking about? Because it's not about salt and it's not about light per se. Salt is about substance, which Jesus is saying is our identity. What he's really talking about is your identity. Who are you? What is it that drives you? What's your purpose? What are your core values? What's your plumb line in life? Where are you? Like Martin Luther said, "Here I stand, I can do no other." That's salt. But the salt has no value just sitting there. The substance is there. The potential is there. Everything's there. It has to be used. And so then Jesus says, be the light. Be the light. And light is outside of you. Light can't be touched. Light leads, it guides, it directs. Light is about mission and purpose. So Jesus is saying, he's asking the question here, you are to be the salt. Salt is substance. Salt is value. Salt is your integrity. Salt is your honesty. Salt is how you live, who you are. But that's not good enough. It has to have the light. And the light shines out. It gives direction. It illuminates. It is seen. It helps us to live. You see, what Jesus is saying here is there's a twofold definition of discipleship: identity and mission or purpose. And you have to have both. And when you have both, then you know what you become? Salt of the earth. You ever known those people? The salt of the earth people. You can count on them. They're dependable. You know where they stand. They disagree with you honestly. They are empathetic, sympathetic. They are all those kinds of qualities. When you look at them, they look like everybody else. Until the light shines. And then, as someone said, things change. Thank you for that. Things change. So that's what I'm saying this is about. Which is what Jesus is telling us that we as God's people are to be about, with values and attitudes of integrity, even when the truth challenges us or it challenges the world. Because if we don't do that, what happens to the salt? It's lost its flavor. It's useless, has no value, and something in the cooking is missing. Missing. So the church is not just called, and a lot of times we see ourselves as to help and to hold and to be compassionate and so forth, and that's all there. But also we are called to speak the truth in love. To speak the truth in love. To be the social conscience of our society. Not people who are ruled over by outside authorities or ruling over ourselves, ruling over society, but we who speak to those who are outside and over, being a social conscious, faithful, and as objective as we can be, recognizing that we're all human and all trying to do our best. And it concerns me. It really concerns me greatly at this point in time, and I'm asking everyone here to be objective and to set aside any partisanship or political prejudices, because this is a church religious faith issue. It concerned me in this summer when it was proposed in the Republican National Platform to eliminate the Johnson Amendment, which was affirmed this past week at the prayer breakfast. Now, the Johnson Amendment was put into place under the Eisenhower administration, I think 1956 or thereabouts, to try to assure that churches would be the social conscience of the country. They may not speak the same voice, they may have different opinions, but somehow they're pricking our conscience to think it was to keep us out of the ruling of others. So if that is eliminated, and it's taken us 2,000 years to get there, friends. Remember, Henry VIII became the ruler of the church in England. And of course, there was rebellion against that. When they came to the United States, the Puritans tried to do it and drove the Baptists and the Catholics out, right? Because they were going to rule. That was put in there to help us stay where we're supposed to be. Not in support of one or another, but to speak to the issues and to try to help us to determine what our core values are. And if that is eliminated, what that means is I can stand here and I can not only support a candidate, I can direct your giving to the candidacy of those people. We evolved from a church into a political action committee. And I tell you, that will be the end of the church. Now, you can think about it, you can disagree with me, but I have to tell you, I feel very passionate about this. Very passionate. Because we're already split up enough. I can't even imagine what that would do. So, we are called to have our core values and to live those out in empathy and compassion and honesty and integrity, so that light and salt will be modeled for others. Most of us probably, I would say most people here, would claim to have had the opportunity for a good education, basically loving parents, a safe home life, and a lot of possibilities. But remember, others have not had that. Others were not blessed to be born where and how we were. They've been neglected, taken advantage of, sometimes abused. So where and how do they learn what we take for granted? Where are we the model of what we say are our core values. Not asking others to do it, but what do we model for them? Jesus reminds us that this faith thing has two components: who we are and how we live who we are. What we do with it. And in my mind, as I said, that's when we become the salt of the earth. Now take a deep breath, because we're going to shift gears. Exhale all that stuff. We're going to go to John. Lazarus is Jesus' close friend, and he has died. And Jesus resuscitates him. Jesus brings him back to life. After 4 days, no small feat. But the core of this story comes in the encounter between Jesus and Martha. This is a very, very deep and poignant discussion. Jesus says, "Do you believe your brother will rise from the dead?" Now, the first part of that is, do you believe? That's a salt question. What's at the core of your values? Do you believe? What do you believe? What makes you up? Makes you who you are. Do you believe? What do you live? Do you believe in the resurrection? And Martha says, yes, I believe in the resurrection at the end of time. Isn't that interesting? She casts it off into the future. And Jesus swings around immediately, and he says to her, "Oh, Martha, I am the resurrection." That's present tense. That's not something in the future. Jesus is saying, why are you looking there? Why are you thinking about something someday? Why aren't you thinking about the power of the resurrection, of hope and of courage and of boldness and of witness now, today, even in the midst of your loss? What do you believe? Do you believe that all things are possible with God? Somebody said that, right? If you believe that, then why are you putting it off to someday? Why are you saying that hope and courage comes someday? It is available now. I am the resurrection and the life. You see, Jesus is saying, Martha, the resurrection is right here in front of you now. It's the power you can have. Believe that. And your light will shine. Things will change. You, your life, your family, the future, it will get better. Which brings me to my point. Each of you have value. Each of you have worth. All of you have gifts and blessings. You have skills. You have great hopes. You have big hearts. Americans are among the most generous people in the world. But you can't hide it or hold it or protect it for someday. It's not about something in the future. It's not about the way it's going to be. It's not God's going to rescue us out there. Jesus says, I am. Now is the time. Now is the resurrection power and hope. If you believe, if you truly believe, then you will be filled today with hope that is real. And you will become an active bearer of light in an increasingly tired age. And if we're not doing that, what happens? The world is missing something. The salt has lost its flavor. And we have limited the power of God. I know it'll happen someday. I believe that. I can't imagine it happening now. And Jesus says, imagine it. Otherwise, you're putting limitations. You're putting your limitations on what God can or cannot do. And our job is not to limit God by our fears, allowing Murphy's Law to rule in our hearts, but instead helping others to be infused by our enthusiasm for the fact that God isn't done with us yet. A commentary on television this week. You can tell that every once in a while my kids visit my house. I turn on, it was probably Entertainment Tonight or something. But it was a story of Britney Spears. Wow, we are a long way, right, from salt and light. Although she lights up the stage, I got to admit. But the commentator said something very insightful and poignant, I think, as they talked about her maturation, her growth, and all she's gone to. One of the commentators, one of the analysts, said that in our society and world, what happened to her and what we often do in our culture is we objectify people. That she went from being a small, naive image of a girl into this objectified sex object and dancer and singer. And the analyst said that when you turn a person into an object, then they can become a commodity. And you can sell them. Isn't that brilliant? You can sell them. And it's no longer the person anymore. It's what you've made them into. It's marketable. It's profitable. We have to admit that sometimes we do that with the church, we do that with Jesus, we do that with our faith. We reduce it to a bumper sticker, a platitude, something we can market or sell. We've turned it often into a commercial industry. And Jesus says it's about something more. That's not the light, that's not the witness, but how you live out of your core being in the world. The Apostle Paul said, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a power of love and of a sound mind." And it was Robert Kennedy, who I think was paraphrasing George Bernard Shaw. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he said, "There are those who look at things the way they are and ask why, and I dream of things that never were and ask, why not?" All things are possible with God. Jesus says, do you believe this? And if you do, why not let your light shine? Why not live out a bit of saltiness into the world? Why not do what you can do with who you are, regardless of your age or status? I think sometimes as we grow older, we forget there's still work that we can do. You can sign that petition. There are things you can do. You may not do what you once could do, but you can do things. And young people need to balance us out, right? There are things we can do emanating from our saltiness to be the light.